So for me, the most interesting thing going on right now is what's happening over at DC Comics. 2 days ago, AT&T took a chainsaw pretty much to the entire Warner Media landscape. DC Comics was not spared. All the stuff that a lot of people have been saying for the past year came true. They've pretty much whittled down a lot of their senior editorial. They're taking a look at everything in the business over there and kind of making it more streamlined. I think they're actually making the business a little bit better and will help DC Comics last for a long time. They're going to make them profitable. DC Comics makes barely any profit. I don't think they lose any money, but they don't really make any money either. That's not good enough for AT&T. AT&T wants them to make real money. So they're essentially running AT&T. AT&T is essentially running DC Comics like a business. So people that have been failing upwards, like Andy Corey, who crashed and burned the entire DC Vertigo line, he got kicked out. I mean, that's a big thing in comic books. There's no repercussions for failure. You can lose sales over and over and over again. Crash and burn comics. That's okay. We like the way that you think, so we'll just promote you. That's how it's been in comics for a long time. That seems to be changing, at least for over at DC Comics. A lot of people were booted out. We have a little bit of the aftermath now of that move from Bleeding Cool. You can say what you want about Bleeding Cool, but people in the comic book industry do talk to Rich Johnston. So when he reports on this stuff, 9 times out of 10, it's usually pretty accurate. The guy's got tons of sources. I mean, he's spent a lot of time on his knees in the comic book industry, and sometimes it pays off for him like it has for the past couple of days. So there's some interesting stuff coming out. Notably, this section here, I got a couple articles from him. So with so many staff leaving the company, around a third, it is estimated, the continual production of comic books is likely to take a hit. But the graphic novel line, which has become more valuable to DC, is so far in advance of production that no one would notice until well into 2021. And that goes along with what I've been saying. The market has been moving towards graphic novels for a long time. That's where the focus is. And it makes sense. Periodicals don't really bring in that much money. That's why they're cutting them down. The Bat books, Superman, Wonder Woman, maybe a couple others, those are safe. But really obscure titles, they're just not going to be around anymore. I mean, you're already seeing books that make money get canceled. Harley Quinn's been canceled, Supergirl, Batgirl. I think a couple other ones were on that list as well. You're going to see more and more titles get announced for cancellation, and they'll likely continue on through graphic novels. That's going to be the new thing now. They're just going to put out graphic novels every month. Now, they're not going to get rid of the floppies. Those are still going to come out, but you're not going to see as many. I mean, the fact that they've laid off so many editorial, there's just no way they can keep up with them now. Not that editorial really did much of their job anyway. So anyway, because we also hear about what is described as a 2-year plan for DC Comics, which will see DC Comics move to mass market production through Walmart, the licensing of titles with editors moving to brand managers' approval roles alongside a move from DC to digital serialization and original graphic novels, content will still be provided to the direct market, but it will no longer be the priority that it still is at DC Comics. Now, what's interesting here is the mass market production through Walmart. I think that's an interesting thing. They've already been doing that with their giant size books, and I think there's been a couple other books that have been appearing over at Walmart. I wonder, because Walmart has that deal with the Brett Weiser's company. It makes me wonder, like, is Walmart about to put a lot of graphic novels in their stores? That's an interesting thing. Kind of going around comic book shops, that's probably not going to keep them happy. I'm sure they'll probably be mad about this. But it's not a bad idea. And if you can get these, where they belong on a bookshelf and not, I mean, the giant size books are like, I don't know about you guys, but in my Walmarts that I've been to, they're like up front by their cash registers and stuff. Like, tucked away in this little corner where there's like Funko Pops and little like weird toys and stuff. Like, you need to put those back with the books. That's where they belong. I don't know how well those actually sell. I really have been curious about that, and there's really no way to get those numbers. But anyway, it makes sense for them to want to move through Walmart. If you think about it, a lot of the reports have shown that Scholastic and bookstores are where they make the majority of their money. So moving books into the bookshelves at Walmart kind of makes sense. But let's take a look at some other stuff here. So there was a town hall meeting the other day. They did kind of go over everybody that had survived the chopping block, all got together in a Zoom style meeting to go over the future. There is a report here that they do plan on releasing a press release to talk about the future, which is going to be pretty much what I just said. And it's going to be like a very positive announcement. Like, yeah, the future is bright, blah, blah, blah. I think it is brighter for DC Comics now. They're essentially turning into a much more efficient machine and downsizing things. You got to downsize. The market has downsized. You got to downsize with it. It's not the time to expand like Marvel does and throw out 200 comic books a month. It's time to take a lot of books down and shrink because the market has shrunk, and produce what sells. And what does sell? Graphic novels. Graphic novels sell. Graphic novels do quite well. That's what you need to move into. And that's what they're doing. So I would imagine that's what the press release is going to talk about. They'll probably announce the new publishing roles, which Rich Johnston seems to believe that it is Marie Javins and Michelle Wells. They're moving into the publishing roles and reporting to Jim Lee as CCO. I think that that's a good move. Jim Lee never looked comfortable as a publisher. I think he'll be much better as a creative officer, which he does pretty good. He does a pretty good job at. Jim Lee is not going anywhere. I wish they'd bring Jeff Johns back. Jeff Johns does really good work. I wish they'd put him into a more leadership role over at DC Comics, but I don't think that that's happening. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was this. So DC Comics Collections exclusives, Mad and assistant editor changes. There's one notable thing here that I thought was very, very interesting, and that's that Rich Johnston has been told that all exclusive creator contracts that cover the likes of Dan Abnett, Tom King, and Brian Michael Bendis are being reviewed. Now, Dan is actually a really good writer, and I'd hate to see him lose his exclusive contract. Hopefully they'll take a look at his work and sales and say, okay, well, let's keep Dan around. But as the eyes move to Tom King and Brian Michael Bendis, particularly, and I know a lot of people don't like Tom King, I don't like him either, but Brian Michael Bendis writes a considerable amount of comics at DC Comics. The entire Superman line, the Legion of Superheroes, Young Justice, that whole Wonder Comics line or whatever it is. He writes a ton of books, and none of them sell. I want them to take a nice look at that name. I want them to look at all the sales attached to that name and how, particularly the Superman books. I mean, you can look no further than Action Comics and Superman and look at how far that book has fallen. Those books have fallen on the Comicron numbers. You know, Superman and Action Comics used to be bi-monthly books. Both of them were. One of them was coming out every week. And they sold consistently around 50,000 issues, I believe. That was weekly under Jurgens and Tomasi. They were doing very well. And then old Brian Michael Bendis comes in. Now they're once a month, and they're selling under what those books were doing every week. It's kind of pathetic. Brian Michael Bendis has been a cancer to DC Comics. Please get rid of him. Please get rid of him. For the love of God, get rid of Brian Michael Bendis. And then put somebody good back on the Super books and put somebody good on all of his books. But I would love to have a good Superman book again. Brian Michael Bendis is absolutely overrated and terrible. Tom King helped ruin Batman. Get rid of him. He's also an ass. The recent Jay Lee stuff, you know, that all was because of Tom King. Get rid of him too. Keep Dan. You can keep Dan. But that's really it. Those are the big things going on right now. There's going to be a press release soon. I would probably think today or tomorrow. And then we'll know more. But it does seem like things are still changing and more information is coming out. I'm eagerly awaiting some kind of Brian Michael Bendis announcement. God, wouldn't it be so great if it's like, I'm retiring next month. Oh, man, that would be lovely. Go to Hollywood or something, Brian. That's where you want to go. Get off of Superman and go write scripts for some TV show. Please. Anyway, that's it, guys. Let me know what you think about all this. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Also, if you would, please throw a like up. Share the video. Make sure you still subscribe. Subscribe if you're new. Hit that notification bell. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Also, if you want to help support the channel, check out my Teespring store. There's a link in the description. You can find some merchandise in there that you might want to check out.